Good space time, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, we welcome back Sam and Ivan from Tenderdash and further discuss what it is all about. We talk about hashes, Merkle trees, quantum computers, inspiration, team management, bridges, execution, and tornado cache. We now have like over 10, if I'm not mistaken, in Tendermint and Cosmos SDK, you now have over 10 teams. And it's becoming a bit harder and harder to start following who's doing what release.
When like low level structure verifies more like high level business logic to provide some such protection mechanism.
Guys, just to say, you're very self-critical. The question wasn't about you guys not committing back, but just saying, it's very nice that you have that process of thoughts in your head. I loved it. That was super self-conscious kind of thing.
Decentralization is always less efficient, but it has a lot of upsides as well. When a project is very, very decentralized, it's very hard to kill off because it's like a hydra.
Before we rocket off into the podcast, here are the latest news from the sponsor of this episode, Cyber. The Cyber Congress DAO has opened the portal, and Atom, ETH, Terra, and Osmo users that meet the requirements can claim their gift and their moon citizenship on sib.ai. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Citizen Cosmos. We have a part 2 out of, well, however many parts that will be. For now, it's 2 parts. I have with me here Samuel and Ivan from Dash Core Group, or Tenderdash. And last time, this was about a month and a half ago, guys, maybe a little bit more. I'm losing track of time. The guys introduced what are they doing, how is this related to Tendermint, all of the differences, a lot of pluses that this protocol now has, some of the things that are different. And we spoke about all sorts of things, even about Mongols and grandmothers and whatnot. I mean, it was a bit fun, crazy, and technical. But guys, hi, welcome back.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, hello, yeah.
How are you today? You guys look full of energy today.
For those that can't see me, no, he's being... Yeah. Well, always up late working, heavy sprints recently.
What about you, Ivan?
Exciting to be here again. And actually, the Sam expressed our moods pretty precise. We're in a like hard rush to release our product, so a little bit sleepy.
Nah, to be honest, it wasn't a bad joke. You know, it was like, come on, guys, you look actually good for somebody who was working all last night. I was just saying to the guys before we kicked off, ironically, before this recording, I was yesterday at another event where one of your guys, Dmitry, was speaking, and he was saying, and maybe we can start with this. He was actually saying about that because there was a release that Tendermint did and then rolled back because of a bug, that now there is actually a lot more differences between when we last spoke, between the code that Tenderdash uses and that Tendermint has. So do you guys care to elaborate on that and add comment on that? Is it so? Why is it so? What are the differences? Or anything you want, really.
Yeah, sure. So as people might be aware, Tendermint was on V35 and then going into V36. They were well into their ABCI++ V36. They hadn't really worked on same block execution yet, but they had done a lot of other work for same block execution. Then they got into a very bad P2P bug, it would seem, according to what I've read about it. In the meantime, in our team, we had backported all of V35 into our code base, V36 into our code base, and we came to an interesting fork, really. Choice. We either had to continue down the path that we were in, because we had already implemented ABCI++, changed many tests, made a lot of stuff working, or revert back to V34. And we decided to basically just forge ahead with the code that we had backported and modified quite intensely as well. The biggest drawback is that we will inherit the P2P bug that Tendermint has. We believe we'll be able to fix it. So we just went on a different path from the Tendermint crew that decided to revert to V34. We also are currently working and are actually pretty well ahead on same block execution. So I believe that we're going to have that feature out within a few months, out in production, which is going to be, well, pretty cool, actually. If people are not aware, the difference between same block execution and next block execution, well, let me first talk about next block execution really quickly. Next block execution is what Tendermint has been using for the last few years. Basically, in a certain block, the app hash is decided, and then in the next block, it's signed. This actually causes a lot of problems for mobile clients because the state is always signed the block after it is decided. And it causes basically kind of like a chicken and egg problem where you can't really give the state to mobile clients right away. You can't give a proof to mobile clients, to like clients, or even to any client really very quickly. So same block execution really solves this problem, but introduces a lot of changes. This was something that was announced by the Tendermint team, but we now believe that very sadly it will take them longer. So since we did not have the luxury really of waiting any longer, we just went straight ahead and built it ourselves.
Ivan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so basically the migration from next block execution to same block will make our system much more efficient since, as Sam mentioned already, we're getting the signed state only on the next block. So technically we need to keep two copies of state or two divs on the nodes. One is current state and one is signed state -1, what we can respond with to the light clients. So it's like extra data for sure. And the many processes will be simplified with same block execution because, for example, we don't need to create extra proof block if app hash is changed and things like that. Also, I would add that Tendermint guys were going to keep next block execution as well. So it's supposed to be optional. Either you go with same block or next block. It's configurable. And I believe the rationale behind of it is to support the previous applications built with Tendermint, kind of backward compatibility. And probably for some applications, simple applications, it's easier because you don't need to keep simultaneous state for different rounds, different proposers and stuff. So like the application kind of easier to implement or simpler. In our case, we good to have only same block execution. So we're ripping off all next block execution stuff from Tendermint because it's easier to implement. It's more like the fast track basically, and we don't need to keep the backward compatibility with previous clients. So there's a difference in our approaches at this point.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing to something that Ivan said just now and explain what he meant when he said about you need a database that supports same block execution. One of the difficulties is that you can receive multiple blocks that can all be valid. For example, a previous round can actually get the 2/3 threshold in same block execution, which makes it so you need to have a certain database that allows for multiple, let me just say, universes of possibilities that can happen on that block. And you have to be able to store all of them. And then basically one is going to win. And not all databases can really do that, or storage solutions. Thankfully, our storage solution, GroveDB, that we basically built from scratch, has that capacity. So we're all good.
I have a question that I'm going to build on that, but it's going to be, in a sense, more, I guess, debate kind of question than a technical question, but in terms of technicality. And it has a reason. A reason? Can I say that? I don't know. That the English language is a weird thing, and especially the morning. It has a reason. That sounds really clever. Yesterday, and what we were talking about actually is when a project that grows, and I think Dash and Tendermint are good examples of big projects in this case, and development and core contributors. Is it a good thing, in your opinion, as developers, and as developers with a lot of experience, both of you. So there is like two ways, main ways, right? There is like the more centralized way where there is one big developer group that's committing into the code. And we know, okay, this group is committing to the core code. We know when the releases are coming. We know more or less who's responsible for each release, so on and so forth. Then there is like the other thing, which is now we see in Ethereum. We're now starting to see it in Cosmos Tendermint and Cosmos SDK. I'm not so familiar with how it goes on in Tenderdash. But we now have like over 10, if I'm not mistaken, in Tendermint and Cosmos SDK, you now have over 10 teams. And it's becoming a bit harder and harder to start following who's doing what release, where did the bug. Of course, we can look on GitHub and see all those things, obviously. But in terms of like developer experience, is that a good thing, or does that lead to those kind of separations where one team like yourselves was working on a code, you were more or less close, then something happened that didn't happen? That wasn't, you know what I mean, right? This is like a whole philosophical kind of debate, but I would love to hear your opinion as experienced developers on that.
Now that's a very interesting question that I haven't thought much about before you asked it. Well, I mean, I've thought about it over the years. So yes, there are two main viewpoints on this. And in the pure open source world, the best thing would really be contributors from everywhere. That works well, but it's much slower. It's much more efficient. Decentralization is always less efficient, but it has a lot of upsides as well. When a project is very, very decentralized, it's very hard to kill off because it's like a hydra. There are 9 heads, 12 heads. How many heads does a hydra have? Somewhere. Basically, you can't kill off a decentralized project that a lot of people all around the world that are sometimes anonymous are just contributing to. When there's a centralized authority, there can be a decision made like, okay, we're doing this by some manager who does not really understand what the implications of what they're even doing really is. Not talking about myself. I'm perfect. So there was probably another question is, why did Tenderdash offshoot? Why did we not do pull requests into the Tendermint codebase? Well, the real issue there was about speed and time to delivery and thinking about ourselves, really. We needed a certain set of features. And let's say you have a certain code, right? And you want to make it into the thing you need. There is either the way of like having to support multiple features or going with basically an axe, cutting off the stuff you don't need and building the stuff you need. And of course, because we understand the stuff we need the most, we can get that working very quickly. Otherwise, we would have had a lot of pull requests that would have taken a lot of time, a lot of effort on our part. So we went kind of not the more decentralized approach, generally for the efficiency. It's actually interesting because inside of Dash, we have multiple projects. And our payment chain code base, which is written in C++, we get contributors pretty much from everywhere. Yeah, I think for the last release, there were like 15 contributors, right? But only 6 or 7 from Dash Core Group. A lot of people just doing small things, not very big things. A few did, a few sizable contributions. But anyways, Ivan, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I hope we could contribute something when we are on the finish line and to provide some valuable changes to Tendermint, like to upstream at some point. But for now, as Sam said, we're kind of selfish at this point. Yeah, because we have pretty strict deadlines, and the strategy is, I think, it's the best for us at this point. But to share the technologies and solutions, what we did with community, it will be valuable, I think, and I would come back to it later.
Guys, just to say, you're very self-critical. The question wasn't about you guys not committing back, but just saying, it's very nice that you have that process of thoughts in the head. I love that. That was super self-conscious kind of thing. But I was really genuinely asking, like, what's your thoughts in terms of, like, for example, in Ethereum, we see it a lot within Fura, right? where they're rushing into things, somebody committed, bam, there is a bug, and everybody's screwed, everybody's fucked kind of thing. I was actually more throwing a stone into the Tendermint team here that rushed into doing a release, which was buggy. And my question was, what do you think? Is that like a better thing when there is loads of teams that commit to the code? Do they make it better, or will we see more bugs as more and more teams will commit to the code?
So my view on this is you have to have very, very strong gatekeepers of your code. And that's what's important. I've reviewed pull requests both from internal and external people that just needed a lot of changes. And then sometimes I review pull requests that are wonderful. And you just really need to make sure that there's no type, especially in production software, and especially for Tendermint, you need to have multiple reviewers that all know the code base perfectly. You have to test things basically to hell. Make no assumptions about things just being able to work. And just running the unit test is often not enough. You have to make sure you have good code coverage. Yeah, so it had sound like I'm not extremely aware about the woes inside of Tendermint, but from my understanding, there has been a lot of turnover potentially, and this might have caused some of the more experienced developers not to be gatekeeping the code as well as possible. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
To be honest with you, this is actually what we're talking with Dmitry a little bit, like we're on the meetup that I was yesterday. It's a bit hard to understand from the outside because there are more than one team that is committing. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the main teams, and I'm scared to be quoted on that. So people who are listening, please don't quote me on that. It was one of the Berlin GmbH GmbH teams that was one of the main code contributors at one point to Tendermint. And the main girl, one of the main girls, she left a long, long time ago. So it wasn't right now. So I don't know exactly if there was such a thing where there was like a developer change right now. I didn't follow because, to be honest, the last kind of months and a half I was out because I was on a long holiday, which was really great. But it could have been happened, and I did hear that somebody else mentioned that it might have been a developer switch. I was just curious and like how you guys viewed it. But it's cool to see that the developers are so self-conscious. It was like, shit, we have to give back what we created. I loved it. It was very kind of thing.
One thing that we definitely want to do a pull request to Tendermint for is our BLS signature code.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Not really.
Love it.
No. So just for your audience, BLS signatures are a special type of signatures that use elliptical curve pairings. And basically, they can create threshold recovered signatures, which, well, they can create aggregated signatures and threshold recovered signatures. It's a little bit like magic, where let's say you have, well, I'm going to talk about aggregated signatures first because that's kind of interesting. Let's say you have 5 signatures that are all signing the same message. You can aggregate them together. So you have 32, let's say 32 bytes for each signature. You can basically combine 5 signatures that are all 32 bytes into one signature that is an aggregated signature that's also 32 bytes and has the same level of security. And this actually is very, very cool because you can basically save a lot of space, both on disk and on P2P connections. Bandwidth, yeah, sorry. Threshold recovered signatures are a little bit different. Basically, it's a little bit like aggregation, but instead it uses, well, it can use Shamir secret sharing to create one signature if a threshold of signatures has been acquired. So like if you have had 67 out of 100 signatures, in the case of Tenderdash, they will be able to be threshold recovered, and you'll get one signature that basically proves the majority of members have signed something. This has one downside, which actually is the biggest downside of Tenderdash versus Tendermint, is that basically this does not use the power of nodes. Tendermint, every node in the system has a weight to it based off of how much of the token question is actually, staked into that node. in Dash, all of our nodes have the same stake, so we don't really have that problem. And we are able to make all of our nodes basically on equal footing, which allow for these threshold recoverable signatures. There is mathematics that is possible to create threshold recovered signatures on nodes that have like different strength, different power. That math is super advanced.
Yeah, we read this paper. It's crazy. Not sure we're going to implement it soon.
It's possible, though. And I really do think that Tendermint developers should work on this. And maybe one day we'll have the capacity to do it as well. I do think that this is kind of the future because it really is much more powerful. In my opinion, it's the next step. Even if it's not to our project, it is something very worthwhile to work on just to create the library for other projects to use.
Do you guys remember the name of the paper?
Ooh, that's actually very interesting. Ivan, you found it, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere in our research channel.
Well, we talk research. It's not more. Even if you find it later, I can like edit later to the description. Would be interesting, I think, for some people that want to look it up. I would definitely look it up. I'm sure there'd be some listeners who would for sure would want to look it up. Sounds cool.
Sure.
If I'm not mistaken, very quickly, it basically uses a different set of polynomials than Shamir's secret sharing would do to allow for different powers. If I'm not mistaken, but it's been 3 months since I read it.
It's my favorite things, especially like on Saturday, Sunday at like 8, 9 a.m. with a coffee. That's the best kind of stuff. Yeah. If we were to keep roughly on the same topic of projects going a little bit separately and bridges. So sooner or later, there will be some kind of bridge that will connect those two projects together. And I think an interesting topic lately that has been going around, and I would love to hear your thoughts here. We lost 160 million, I think, to bridges hacking in the past like month alone, or a month and a half alone in crypto in general. And what do you guys think? Where is all this bridges architecture heading? Like, are we gonna get maybe even less secure and decentralized? I don't know what would be the thing we have to give away here. Would it have to be security, decentralization, speed for bridges to become better and more efficient? And what's your opinion, guys?
I must admit that I do not know about the hacks on Tendermint.
It's not ABC related. Nothing to do with Tendermint. This is like crypto
outside.
General.
Yeah,
Crypto.
I was
Yes,
like,
crypto.
is there something I don't know about?
No. Sorry. This is like, I was talking generally, like general topic,
Okay.
bridges hacking. Like there was about 160 million in a month and a half. And I don't remember, it was particularly one bridge. I don't really remember what it was. It has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
But I'm curious as to what you guys think, because obviously, bridges are bridges.
Yeah, well, I think the problem has to do with two things: the security of each chain that interopts with, and also the security of the bridge. It's some projects, I believe, rush a little bit too quickly, and they don't really take the time to put a lot of security in. In fact, I have seen so many exploits. Well, it's not like exploits they're just so obvious. When I've read white papers since 2017, I've been sometimes like, what? There was actually, for Luna, for example, right? I told everybody I could tell, don't touch that. Not with a 10-yard stick. But that's not a good example for bridges. Okay, let me take a little detour and say what we're doing for security in Bash platform.
Please.
One thing that can always create a lot of problems are inflationary bugs in any blockchain, right? Where value can be basically created out of nowhere. What we're doing to protect that is we've introduced a new type of tree where, if you think about how a Merkle tree works, basically you have a left element, you have a right element, and then you hash the two together, and then that gives you the parent node, and that goes all the way to the top of the tree or to the bottom of the tree, the way that you're looking at your tree. There's obviously no direction. But basically, if you add in the sum of the left element and the right element, you can basically create a system where the total amount of credits among all members of the system, when I say credits, I mean tokens or anything, is known at any time at a low level. So we're implementing this to make sure that there's absolutely no way in Dash platform to have an inflationary bug. So it's basically a system of checks and balances where the code verifies that if person A sends to person B a certain amount of tokens or credits or anything, that code should execute. But there's so much code. What happens if there's an off by one that somehow somebody can exploit, creating an infinite amount of credits on the system? Because who knows, right? But this checks and balances system will make it impossible for such a thing to occur. So that's actually pretty cool.
Since you're talking about credits, I would like to give credits to Sam, since he came up with this pretty interesting idea when like low level structure verifies more like high level business logic to provide some such protection mechanism. And I think it's pretty interesting approach, especially in layered systems when you can verify for such potential attacks. That's super cool.
Yeah, and what's even funnier is that I don't think anybody's ever done this before. I thought it was a pretty easy idea. I programmed a proof of concept in like 2 days, and yet why does nobody ever use such a thing? I guess, nobody had thought about it before. Or people actually trust the code. But here we're going to have a double trust in Dash platform, which will make it so such a bug could never occur. Now, could another type of issue where somebody creates a contract and the contract itself has an issue? Yes, of course. But it won't cause an inflationary bug. It will just basically be that somebody interacting with that contract could lose money.
What about something crazy like a collision?
Collisions, no. In our system, we use Blake 3. We use Blake 3 with 128 bits of security, meaning Blake 3 256. I believe that has 128 bits of security. Basically, the NIST currently has a recommendation of 112 bits of security, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're well above that. I don't think anybody has ever broken anything even remotely close to 112 bits of security. It's not something that I'm worried about until at least we have quantum supremacy. And if for people that don't know what quantum supremacy is quantum computers that can do things better than classical computers and especially solve specific problems in hashing. But hashing does not have as many problems in terms of security as private public keys. Yes, it's a lot easier to solve hashes using quantum computers, but it isn't evident. It's not like a cakewalk. You still need a lot of qubits. Basically, what I'm trying to say is signatures will break much, much faster than hashes. So when we get to quantum computers, one day. I've heard about quantum computers 2005. So it's 2022. It's probably still 15 years away.
Getting back to bridges, that's interesting thing because it's kind of trending thing, and many projects trying to introduce because the idea behind is pretty cool that they have interoperability between the chains, can do decentralized exchanges and many cool stuff. And I believe that there are many pioneers which trying to do something like POC, proof of concept, and provide this feature to test. And as usual, pioneers are suffering. So what I would like to admit that IBC guys, the people who stand behind the standard, they went in a different way, different approach. They created pretty comprehensive specification and involved more preliminary work. And it looks pretty mature already. I mean, IBC specification and technology itself. And I'm not surprised that we're not seeing, as you said, any significant or any attacks on the system. So I'm happy that we're on this side.
We were talking again yesterday with somebody I was recording, Tariq Lewis, guy from Volume Finance, and they did a few protocols as well. And we were talking like more philosophically, I guess. It was technical, but in a philosophy way about, can you say that it's impossible to hack? Well, of course, there is no such thing as impossible. But scientifically, if it wasn't hacked yet, you can assume that it's secure for today, for now. That was our kind of like common denominator that, okay, we're not going to say that it's the safest thing in the world. No. But if it wasn't hacked until today, at least for today, it's safe. What's going to happen tomorrow is what's going to happen tomorrow, of course. And if it's get hacked, then it's a whole different story. But talking about hacks, last time we did talk about Mt. Gox. And now there is news about Mt. Gox Bitcoins being released. And it doesn't matter whether you're the lucky one or not the lucky one. What's your thought in general about 10 years later or however many years later, 140K Bitcoin, really getting released into the market? Is that going to cause trouble an already sort of shaken market? Or are we okay? Are we safe to breathe?
Well, yes and no. We have to think about, there are 140K being released, but at the same time, there has been a percentage of that that's already been sold in advance to companies basically that had leveraged positions. So I'm not sure exactly what percentages are going to hit the market, but yes, obviously there's going to be a significant amount of Bitcoin sold that is going, in my opinion, to lower the market. But I think that it will recover quite quickly. Bitcoin and the overall crypto markets are extremely resilient. So save up some cash for when that happens.
Ivan, do you have any thoughts out of curiosity? Because I mean, obviously, everybody I think has their own thoughts on such a big event in terms of like, I mean, we all in this market, whether we want it or not, kind of thing. We're dependent on it because it's our livelihood in a way.
Before he goes, do we have a date for when it hits already?
I'm not sure. I think it's actually, ironically, there was somebody who tweeted that it happens in the same day or the same week with something to do with the staked ether from the merge also being like released or something like that. And it's kind of like a very interesting week of a lot of ether being unlocked, a lot of Bitcoins being released. And it's like, okay, is this like sell week or something like this? So somebody was mentioning that. I'm not sure if this is really coinciding, but that is something I heard on Twitter, and I have not double checked that information, so it's not double checked. But Ivan, out of curiosity, do you have any thoughts on this? I mean, considering we are living in this market, regardless of whether we are technical or not technical, we are here. It's around us.
Honestly, I let other people to think about it because I have enough gray hairs on my head already, and I just try to stay away from market, and I'm not checking prices and stuff. So
I love that answer. I love it. But the price wasn't about the price; it was more like generally what we think. But I see what you mean. Guys, changing subject, talking about like, I did read, I don't remember where in the documentation on Dash I found it, or whether it was documentation or somewhere scrolling along somewhere. There was a thing about Web3 APIs or dAPIs, as the documentation in Dash called them, like dAPIs. I like the name dAPI. Sounds a bit silly, but I like it. So I have a question about that, and then I have a general question. I'm going to ask the general question first, I think. Again, considering with what happened lately in the crypto space, how on earth or do we need in the first place to build like a Web3 stack? Because with what happened with Tornado Cash and GitHub, I don't know if you guys were following that story, where the guys from the Tornado Cash thing did get into trouble because of the American bureaucracy or whatever. I'll shorten it to that. And the most atrocious thing was the guys deleting the GitHub accounts of the developers, not even banning them, literally deleting the whole thing, and it was like, what the fuck?
Well, GitHub is run by Microsoft, which is an American company, and they can be compelled by the US government to respect orders from, I think this was the Department of Homeland Security. I'm not sure. The issue, I mean, as many people are aware, is that Tornado Cash was being used according to the reasons that were been given by North Korean government. I'm not sure for what reason, I won't speculate, but that's, I think, the biggest reason why they went after Tornado Cash. I personally believe that it's a very fine line to thread because basically, in many systems, when you make a payment, you have a certain degree of privacy. For example, if I use my MasterCard to buy something, I have a certain degree of privacy where the company knows about it. Yes, the government could ask the payment provider about that. But in crypto, very often, there is no centralized entity, and you have only one of two choices: either make it public to everybody or make it private to everybody. And when you make it private to everybody, well, it can also be used for nefarious purposes. But the other side, making every transaction public to everybody, is really horrible. It means that everything that you do is completely public. So the problem is that it hasn't really been found a nice middle ground between those two. And I'm not sure if there will be a middle ground ever be able to be found. It's going to be a few interesting years in front of us to see what really happens.
It's a tough subject. And I'm always curious, what do developers think? Like, how do we build the stack in Web3? Do we have to still comply? Do we say, oh, screw compliance, we are Web3 and we are all for freedom? And of course, there are different opinions that, in my opinion, shape the industry. And that's how we become decentralized, I guess.
Well, it's always one of those things. I've been working on this project for 5 years. I don't want my work to go fund something that's bad. I guess what is bad, right? But I don't want it to go funding wars. I don't want anything that I do to go funding child pornography, for example, or dictatorship that hurts human rights or anything like that. At the same time, I have a strong belief that people have a right to not have, let's say, somebody buys a dildo online. That shouldn't be known to their grandparents. You know? Sorry for being like straight up about this, but you need to have the balance between the two, and you need to try to find how to do that. I think that eventually we will come up with some type of compromise solution, but that requires both parties to really be open to negotiation. And I don't think that there really has been any negotiation, really. You have one side that's like deep in decentralization, screw compliance, and then there's the other side that this can be used for harm, no privacy at all. And it is possible as well that a middle ground can't actually even be found from a technical reason. And that's what some people have said. It's possible that one can't. When I think of potential solutions, you could have privacy on the level that only governments could actually break. Not super great. You could have privacy where you have basically company or an organization gatekeeping your privacy. That's kind of what you have currently with like MasterCard and Visa. Those are potential options. It's not great. I would much prefer having privacy for everybody, but I do understand what the government has said and how things can be used for bad purposes. You really have to take that into consideration as well. Ivan, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have some discussions at this point in our organization, how we're going to deal with such content on Dash platform. I mean, it's someone decided to host their child pornography website or something on Dash platform, and how we can deal with it, and what is actually bad and what is not, and what is good, and who decide what is bad and what is good. One of their opinions was actually the network governance should decide, and basically the masternode should vote. That's probably something like middle ground for us. And we as developers, we don't, basically, it's not our responsibility to choose, and the network should decide. But yeah, that's a very tough question, very philosophical.
It's a touchy subject. I just want to throw like two stones to everybody is listening. I don't want to make conclusions because I think everybody has to make their own conclusions here. I'm just going to throw like a stone of thought to add to what you guys said. So recently, There's been several cases, and one of the most interesting in this direction was where in the States, and a guy using Google Cloud, and I think it was Hangouts or something like that. He was calling the doctor, and then the child, the baby, had a rash, and the rash was on the genitals. And the doctor asked specifically in the call, "Can you please send me the photo of the child?" So obviously they send the photo of the genitals to the doctor, and automatically within like some minutes or literally, Google didn't just report this guy via the whole system as a child offender. He became, sorry, an offender. He blocked all his access to everything, contacts, 2FA. This was crazy. They blocked his like 2FA, and they could actually block that. Not many people knew that it would be able to block that thing. His whole life, literally in a matter of seconds, went from one place to another, and that was crazy. So I don't want to make conclusions. Just throw in those kind of things to think for people who are gonna debate for themselves whether it's good or not. On that note, move on to the next, because I see it's a touchy subject. But if you want to add anything, Sam, go.
Well, it's always really hard to build decentralized systems that have some sort of
Censor?
censorship. And we are heavily trying to do this. As I said, I worked on this project for 5 years. I definitely don't want it to be used for, very vile things.
Like the taxes.
What? Taxes?
I said like the taxes that the government uses to sponsor building of weapons, for example, right? No, come on. Of course, this is like a devil's advocate thing, of course. But I'm just trying to point out, I think that we all use things for bad or good, right? Like,
yeah, obviously. The thing that becomes more tricky when you deal with decentralized governance is that, various people of the organization live in various countries of the world that all have different laws. Some, for example, outlaw gambling. Some will outlaw pornography completely. Some outlaw marijuana. Some don't outlaw marijuana, for example. So it's very hard to create a global system with global censorship rules when there are local constraints to think about. We haven't really touched this subject. And for the first release of Dash platform, we really don't allow big blobs of data to be inserted in platform. For example, you could write, I think it's happened. GIFs have been put into the Ethereum blockchain, into the Bitcoin blockchain. But in any blockchain, yes, you could put bad information into the blockchain. However, without tools to actually decrypt that information, I don't think that it really is a big issue. I think it's already been dealt with in the case of Bitcoin. And in Dash, in a platform, for example, our idea for the future is to basically, if there are specific nodes of information that have been collectively deemed irresponsible, then the project will actually be called Abscission. This is years down the line, though. And until that, we're going to really just restrict the amount of space that each individual blob can contain. Like that, just like in Bitcoin and Ethereum, it gets very cost prohibitive to store images.
I was going to, on that note, it wasn't a great note to wrap up on, but I'm going to change it slightly. So we go down from here. But because we spoke about motivation, of course, last time a lot. And I want to ask for this time, again, like a wrap up on a nicer kind of thing. Has there been anything, because we spoke last time, I think it was roughly the beginning of the summer when we spoke. And you guys have gave like a great answer about motivation, and it was like a very complete in each other answer. I remember that very well. Has there been anything else that inspired you since then with building, with carrying on? I mean, of course, I've heard a lot of things where you guys have been a lot in producing in terms of like working a lot, and it came from different angles. So obviously, maybe something did inspire you guys separately. So motivation we did speak about, but the current inspiration that happened the last 2-3 months, has there been anything like that for any of you guys that you would like to share or would feel safe enough to share?
Wrote the deadline become closer. It's really inspiring.
Motivation, inspiring, yeah.
You see the line in the end of the tunnel. And actually, we created pretty detailed roadmap, the feature map, literally aligning to specific developer and dependencies between the features, and pretty detailed. And we're very close to for the feature freeze. That's very exciting for me personally. And I started to write more Rust. That's what I'm like, waking up every morning is a good mood. Like, oh, I'm gonna write more Rust today. That's very inspiring as well.
For those that don't know, Rust is a programming language, an amazing programming language. And for Ivan's motivation, I go and meet him sometimes with a pointy stick.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, you're waking up at noon, huh? Point. Wake up! It's time to code.
That's inspiration. That's love.
Yeah. By the way, we're gonna meet each other very soon in Georgia in summer.
Nice.
Many people from DCG, like Dashcore Group, is gathering there.
There is a lot of people I know in blockchain space in Georgia. Some from X-Parity, several people, and several people who organize different hackathons and stuff like that. So it's getting interesting in Georgia in terms of developers, blockchain developers. Sam, would you like to add anything to that stick inspiration story? Or
Yeah, it's going to sound really corny, but my inspiration are the people I work with. It's actually really true. It sounds so corny though. But I just really like the people I work with. And it's always very motivating to work with people that are motivated themselves. And it just creates kind of like this snowball effect. And then you create really cool stuff. And it feels so good when you start an idea, work on it with 2-3 people in your team, and then get it to completion. And then that idea with another idea and another idea create a bigger pull request. And then eventually you merged in this great feature that can be used by hopefully millions of people in the future.
Nice, man. Nice. I know there has been a lot of things we haven't mentioned, like a lot of some of the killer features. I know that. I know. But I did want to keep this more a little bit like themed, this one. And hopefully in a couple of more months, if you're still not sick of us and of me particularly, we could meet again. And that would be even either closer to the deadline or even beyond the deadline and talk about all the killer features, like in specifically. I know we haven't mentioned a lot of those. I know, guys.
I think we should probably talk after we release same block execution.
Yes, that would be very interesting. I would love that. But for now, I would really want to keep it like a little bit more general. So we have like this conversation. So if that's okay with you guys. But before we start talking all the private secrets, let's say goodbye to everybody, guys. Before we give away all the private secrets between ourselves. Guys, once again, it has been very, very, very pleasurable talking to you. Thank you very much for everybody who's joined in and listened. And I know you can't see the guys. They look a little bit tired from working and trying to bring you that code to production already. I'm sure it's getting closer, as they say. But they look happy tired. Like, guys, don't worry.
Still
they look
smiling.
Tired. Like the stick. I can see the stick kind of going from one window to the other window. So yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.